Hello, hello, hello. Today is Monday. It is already July 1st, 2024. Can you believe it? Y'all be careful. July 4th. Be careful. July 4th. A lot of people are already celebrating July 4th. And they're popping off fireworks, shooting guns, and well, yes, it's a lot of dangerous things that's happening. So just be careful because it is the holiday that everybody loves to make a lot of noise, and popping off is one of the ways they like to make noise. Hey, Eric, I appreciate you coming. It is a live interactive show. So please feel free to comment and ask any questions. Today, I'm going to address some questions that people had asked about homeschooling. Now, I know it's been a bit of a while for me having talked about homeschooling, but I want to get back to it because a lot of people have a lot of questions because now it's summertime and people are trying to acclimate to their kids being at home for the summer. And it's like, oh man, the kids are home. What are we going to do with them? So homeschooling is not just about, oh, what are we going to do with the kids? It's a lot more about, you know, being interactive. And I want to mention, I know I need to just get like a something that puts it in the screen for you to be able to see it really easy instead of just holding it up. But in this book, Generational Wealth, Information Asymmetry, and Your Success, you can go to lulu.com and put my name, Tina Phillips, in the search engine to find that book. In there, I show you a great deal of information about how some things correlate so you can understand reasons and ways to homeschool and be educated on your own. A lot of people, they believe different things. And it's like, well, what's a good reason to homeschool? Well, homeschooling, you don't have any social interaction for your children. That's not true. When you go to school, it's like you better not talk in class. You're gonna get in trouble. It's like um it's like a lot of stereotypes are not being addressed. So how I started homeschooling, let's go with that. I was my husband was active duty military, Navy, and I was working for United Cerebral Palsy, and I was a life coach. And the young lady who had cerebral palsy, she was extremely intelligent. She knew everyone's job to include her own. And she could have been the manager of, her workplace. But because she had cerebral palsy, people have these stereotypes. And in homeschooling, we do not share those stereotypes. Hi, Eddie. Thank you for being here. Please feel free to ask any questions. So it was the day of September 9/11. And here I am working for United Cerebral Palsy, job coaching this young lady who has cerebral palsy. And all hell broke loose. I didn't know for quite a while what was going on. And then I was made aware, and being a church girl, growing up in church all my life, I thought it was the rapture. So I'm like, I'm torn morally. Do I leave this young lady who has cerebral palsy and she's depending on me to protect her and guide her and lead her? I'm like, it's the rapture. Forget that. Bump that. I'm out of here, right? But I was like, man, if I do that, I'm probably definitely not going to get raptured. I'm definitely going to go to hell for that. So I just started praying, and her ride showed up, and I didn't know that was her ride at first. I was like really protective of her, like, what's going on? No. And she told me, I trust whatever she said because she's very smart, even though people have this stigma on people who have been diagnosed with being just a little bit slower than the average person. But I come to my own understanding about how people are. So when she told me, no, that's my ride, and I'm accustomed to this person, and when she helped me to understand that it was okay in the midst of all that chaos that was going on. We had no idea if there was going to be more planes falling out of the sky or what was going on. And a lot of people, it wasn't just me that thought it was the rapture. Now I'm just saying, it wasn't like the eclipse and everybody's like, oh well, a total eclipse is going to be the rapture. No, it wasn't like that. It was like planes are falling out of the sky and crashing, and I was really expecting that there was going to be cars that were also going to be crashing into other cars because now they're unmanned. But it didn't happen, thank God. But I didn't know. So still in the heat of the moment, I'm trying to get to the base now that that young lady was taken care of and she's out of my care, my supervision. So now I got to go and get my husband because that's my primary concern. So I went home. I started calling, where are you? Where are you? And he hesitated to tell me. I said, look, tell me, where are you? He's saying some stuff, but I don't hear anything he's saying. He's saying stuff. And I'm like, where are you? I'm coming to get you. I got my oil and we getting out of here. So he finally told me where he was, and I went. He said, but you can't come over here because the military is blocking everything off, and they're not letting anybody pass. I said, it's okay. I'm coming to get you. Be ready. So by the time I got over there, they had started letting family members in. I was praying the whole time. And I know it was 9/11. I wasn't the only one praying, but God was hearing some prayers that day. I don't know if you know it, but that's my story and that's how I'm going to tell it. So by the time I got over there, they started letting us in. Um, and I went in there and I said, well, look, we got to get out of here. And again, Eddie was, combative. He was like, no, we can't leave because I'll be AWOL and I can get in trouble for that. I'm like, it's the rapture. No, it's just total chaos. There's nobody's checking for nobody. Everybody's, chaotic and running around or whatever. They don't care about little old you. Let's go. We got to go back home and see who's left so we could just, get together in those numbers. And, I don't know what, but I'm just saying, we're not staying here. So he was like, I can't leave. So I couldn't leave him. So I kept on praying, and they was like, well, the military gave us an announcement. They was like, well, the family members can stay, but the military active duty members, they cannot leave. But at first they were saying that we had to leave. I said, well, y'all gonna have a problem because I'm not leaving without my husband. So Eddie and I grew up in church together from diapers. And from that point, we, started dating when we got older. I was like 15, he was 21, and we started dating, courting, because he wanted to marry me. And I'm like, okay, it was at that point where my mind switched from, okay, we're just friends growing up together like family, to this is the person that I have to cover and he has to cover me. So I was like, I'm not going to leave him. So when they said that he couldn't leave, I was determined that we're going to get out of here at some point. It's going to everybody going to be asleep maybe when we leave, or y'all going to watch us walk right on out of here. Either way, we getting out of here. So, at this point, they made the announcements that the spouses can stay because the active duty members could not leave because nobody knew what was going on. So I stayed there. I was like, okay, so it won't be a problem. I'll just stay. And then when they made the announcements that we can even sleep there overnight, that's roundabout when that ride or die loyalty left, because I'm like, I'm not sleeping on the floor in the corridors. So I went back home, got Eddie a air mattress type air pillow and some other creature comforts from home. Because at this point in time, we knew it wasn't the rapture. We knew it was a terrorist act. And we began to talk about, different things, family, and how are we going to raise family in the midst of chaos, and what will we do? Because it seems like it was just getting worse. What you say, Eddie? We were on the base with NSA and it's secure. Yeah, and I did not care how secure it was. There's been many a times where when you're military, you have to acquiesce for the greater good. But in the middle of you thinking that, you know, we're in the middle of total chaos and we don't know what's going on, and I don't feel safe or comfortable here. I was way away from Chicago, which is my hometown where I grew up, way away from loved ones, families, and friends. And I was extroverted. So I had a lot of friends, but it was only people that I could trust. I didn't, I had a lot of associates, but I had a lot of friends too. And it was like, I need to get back to that, because in the midst of total chaos, I need peace. I need peace of mind. I need to know what's going on. I need protection. And if you're not going to provide that, I'm going to get it for myself. So I'm not helpless. It may, I may be really passive in a lot of situations, but when it came to that moment, it was like, fight or flight syndrome kicked in. And I know it kicked in across America, where everybody was like, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And it's like, a lot of people came to a realization of themselves. Eddie and I were the same way. And it was like, well, how are we going to have children in this world where at any moment something like this can happen? Now, we were already well aware of the educational system, and how it was not designed to educate African Americans or people of color. So because my Uncle Fred, when he initially, Uncle Fred Shuttlesworth was in the South, and he asked Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to come out there and help him to fight for the schools, because the children were in just all Black schools, and then other children were in all white schools. And the books, that was his primary point, to exhibit what he was saying about their education not being equal. He stated how the books that the all Black schools had was not equivalent to the books in the all white schools. So when he asked Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to come down South to help to fight to get the students to have equal education, it stuck with us throughout generations to understand that African Americans and people of color will not have equal education, and it will be difficult for them to be educated properly. And Eddie and I were really big on how are we going to educate our children, especially in a situation where it's total chaos. How are we going to get to that child if we got to go like, okay, Eddie's active duty, he's on the base. So we had a plan at this point. Now, after the situation, the day of 911, we had developed a plan right then. Well, what is the plan that we're going to continue on from this point? We have to have a plan. We never had a plan before. We never thought to have a plan before, because terrorism never touched home before. So when Eddie a plan, he said, well, but like, what would we do if we had a kid? A lot of the people on the base had children, and it was like, how are they going to get to their kids? We didn't know how we would get to our kid either. So that was very concerning. What you say, Eddie? Yes, you did. You had a very unique job. They tell us our family needs secondary widows. Yeah, and I get it. And the plan that Eddie came up with was to help me to understand that the military felt that way, that the family members are secondary. They need to take care of themselves, and the active duty members need to take care of themselves and the country. So I had to acquiesce with Eddie's wishes and say, okay, I'm not going to try to come looking for you if it's a problem. But first, I'm going to try to make sure. And what would happen if we had kids? So that's when it really started to dawn on me. We wasn't pregnant at the time or anything, but it's a lot of people who wasn't pregnant before 9/11 and then became pregnant directly after. So once Eddie was released, we did conceive our 911 baby. So it was like still in the making, in the back of my mind. How are we going to take care of this kid? How are we going to provide safety for this child? How are we going to be able to even find education for this child? What are we going to do? And it was not easy to find this information, because it's like, this is not privy information. This is not something that's just out there for everybody to just take and understand and apply to their lives. So what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And it's not easy to find alternate methods of schooling, because the only method of schooling is the brick and mortar schooling. At that time, during 9/11, the only method of schooling elementary children or preschoolers and kindergartners, it was only brick and mortar. And you had to follow certain rules and certain methods to pick the kid up and drop the kid off, and all kinds of things that really would prevent you from falling prey to total chaos, should total chaos ever reoccur. Hi, Sean Anthony. Appreciate you coming. Yes, this is the story about how you guys were homeschooled. So, when I discovered I was pregnant, I started reading to the baby while he was in my womb. I started doing word search puzzles while I'm still praying, like, what do I do? How do I do something different? And then I thought about homeschooling. It came back to my remembrance. Now I felt kind of bad because, my uncle fought for us to have equal education in school. And here I am going the homeschooling method. So I felt kind of bad about it, but I just kept on going with the way I was being led to go. So I found in my searching, while I was still trying to teach the baby in the womb, play music, and do all the things that everyone was saying helps the baby to learn when they're outside of the womb. So I did a lot of music to the baby while he was still in the womb. I did things to educate myself so that my brain could keep moving, and maybe that would help him to develop his brain synapses to make it easier for him to learn once he's out of the womb. I also ate really healthy. I got a lot of sleep. I tried not to be stressed, which is extremely important when you're pregnant. Hey, Tony, good show today. Message Mondays. Yeah, I got a lot to say about that, but I'm going to stick to this topic. But it was difficult because when you're trying to find information, you don't know what information is factual. And that's another reason why I wrote my book, Generational Wealth and Information Asymmetry and Your Success. But in finding out that every school in every district, in every place that we will be stationed, every place that the military stations you, they do not have a high level standard of education for the children. So every state you go to, in every school district you're in something different, the standards are different. Sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher. And when you put a student who's been in the lower district into a higher district, they can have some difficulties catching up and staying on the level with their peers. And those were things that were really bothering me. I know I didn't even have the baby yet. He's still in the womb, and I'm stressing over things that hasn't been my problem yet. But like I said, I was fully aware of it because my Uncle Fred, and his situation with him helping the schools. So when we figured out how to learn how these students were learning, I went online, I pulled up the curriculum. So each district, each school, each state has a curriculum, and it's a requirement. It's a list of requirements where you can figure out what the student has to know in order to get entry to kindergarten, preschool, or first grade, and all the other levels. In doing that, I found some schools have different requirements. So if my child didn't meet the standard for whatever school that I wanted them to go to, they had other options. So I wanted to know what was the difference. So I gathered all of the sources to see what everyone's requirement was. And that's when I learned that in the South, they had a lower expectation for academics than they did in Chicago and in other places. So I was like, hey, Natasha, I appreciate you coming. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Hey, Mike. And I remember Kelly even asking, Mike's wife, I remember she was asking about puppeteering and if that would be an effective method for educating your students. And it's like when you are searching for information to figure out what is the best method to educate, to reach the child, to help them to encode the information properly, meaning you give them the information, they take the information, they understand it, and they're able to apply it when it comes time to apply it so they can apply it properly. And I don't know if Kelly had been watching, but sometimes I would use teddy bears on my show when it was a difficult topic, when I knew that there was a difficult topic and I was addressing that topic like Bitcoin. And I used the teddy bear and the owl to help people to understand. And the visual of physical violence to a child using teddy bears. And I showed a couple of things so people could understand more difficult things to understand. And in my book, Generational Wealth and Information Asymmetry, I show you how it is that people can understand multiple complexities in a really simple way. And it's not true that people are always saying, well, it's true that people are always saying, well, people can't understand complex things. It's too complicated for them. They can't understand that more than one thing can be true at a time. And, it was a lot of craziness. And I'm like, that's not true. That's not what philosophers discovered many years before you just made that stupid comment or that inaccurate statement. But anyway, in my book, I show that as well. It's a very small book. It's not really 123 pages. It's the psychological, it's the psychology behind that 1, 2, 3 that I put it in there, that I made it to be 1, 2, 3. But it's not that difficult. But a lot of times homeschoolers came to find that there's different ways to reach your student. In the brick and mortar schools, we're still trying to find. I was in the brick and mortar schools for a long time. I don't want to date myself, but more than 10 years where I was tutoring and teaching and trying to help my peers even. And it was like people weren't understanding. They weren't getting it. And I understand that. I put myself in their shoes and I say, well, let me just try to be a little slower to see how is it, where they getting trapped up at, and how can I help them? So in putting myself in their shoes, I can see, okay, this is where they're getting trapped up at. This is why the information isn't going according to what the curriculum states it should be. So I was helping in that respect, but I could only reach so many because I'm just one person. So I started talking to the heads, and that's when I was just in high school. So I didn't even know it, but I was already on the path of being an industrial and organizational psychologist, because that is what I do as an industrial organizational psychologist. I talk to the heads, the CEOs, the leaders, those people who are writing the SATs and ACTs and things of that nature. I speak directly to them to tell them how we need to make these changes and implement improvements to the curriculum so people can understand. It got kicked out. Yeah, a lot of people get kicked out of school, because brick and mortar school, because the understanding is not had that, one, there's many places you can school. where the academic standard for each grade level is lower than it is in the district, in each district. So if one district kicked you out of the fifth grade, you would still qualify to go into the sixth grade in a different district if you were in that district, because your grades, your level of understanding of the academic curriculum, it would be of at standard for you to pass to the next grade there. So that conflict was really bothering me. It was like, that's that's stupid. How is it that in one district I'd fail, but in another district I pass? Just pass across the board and make that the remedial level for everyone, regardless of if they meet that higher standard. Nobody's listening to that though, right? Because it's a financial thing that's involved in it as well. I won't go deep into that, but I'll say that these were the methods of measurement that I used to help me to understand how to homeschool. Now, how did I homeschool? Okay, so I looked at those curriculums and I looked at those requirements, and it was too many. It was overwhelming. So I focused on the district that I was in and the state that I was in, even though in the military, we're going to keep transferring and going somewhere else, get stationed somewhere else. So I just focused on what was the lowest standard and the highest standard for the state that I was in. So, for example, I was like, okay, my child, when he's born, he's going to go to preschool. So I want to know, what is the preschool requirements at the lowest standard and the highest standard. And I taught my child from there. I got the materials from various places. You can go to any kind of store and pick up various books that have curriculum based information in it. It says it right on the book. Kindergarten curriculum, preschool curriculum. I got it from like Sam's Club. I saw some books at Walmart, and it was workbooks so that the children could write in the books. And I continued to go to Walmart and Sam's Club to find these books and these materials. And that's when I discovered they had these pens that would also help, so the child can work a little bit more independently and use the pen to touch on the different items to show competency. It would ask questions and the child moves the pen to the right answer, or the pen would make a sound and it would not. It will make a sound, and if that sound came and it was a good sound, and it was a good answer or a right answer. If it made a bad sound, it was a bad answer, and they would try again. But these things were not the norm back then. So I was more hands-on, and I had cue cards. I signed my baby up for scholars, young scholars, scholastics. Had a book thing where you can get books in for young scholars, and they would send 3 books a month, and I would read those books to my children, and I would physically of car couldn't rip the pages, but I would let them physically touch it, because boys are first physical in their developmental stages, and girls are first verbal. So you have to know what kind of child you have. If you have a boy, he is first physical. That is the developmental stages that they teach you in psychology. And I would strongly suggest you, get some education in psychology so that you can know how children develop. So from my studies with psychology, I had a little bit more of a head start, but a lot of people who homeschool don't have any education. They don't have to have any education. You do not have to have a teacher certification in order to homeschool. Do you think that when, what's his name? Freud, was it? Who got kicked out of school? I'm terrible with names, but I got kicked out of school, and his mom started teaching him, and he started to, really excel to the point where he's the level of standard. And it's like, she didn't have the education to make him that educated. No one did. How did that happen? Get my book. I show you how it happened. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but I'm going to tell you that you do not need to have a teacher certified curriculum or degree or anything like that in order to successfully homeschool your children. You can teach them without having all of that. This is what you need, the bare bones of what you need. You need books. You need to know what the standards are, and you need to stay on top of that. Don't worry about if the child is like, oh, they're not interested, I can't get them interested. You're not set in a brick and mortar situation. You can move around. And that's what I did. I took my kids around. I didn't say anything because I didn't know if I was doing it right. And I came to find there's no right and wrong way. So when I learned that, I was like, okay, low key, I'm gonna do what I'm doing and see how that does. And my baby, by the time he was born, like just before we were ready to, go to the delivery room, there was a knock on the door because I was still praying and fasting. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? A man came to the door, and he was of everything. He was selling encyclopedias. It was like 2000. Like, who is selling books, encyclopedias door to door in the year 2000? Now, I was little. I was like 9 years old, and I was going door to door sales with my uncle Eddie, selling Avon. And back then, yeah, you door to door sales. Yeah, please pay attention to the standards. Yes, pay close attention to the standards. Because if you don't meet the requirements for the higher standard, don't enroll your kid at that school. If you decide that, okay, you can't do it, you're going to put them in school. Find out where your kid is and find out what the standards are for that school and put them in that school. If you find out, oh, I tried it and I don't like it, I can't do it. But a lot of it is really more the child taking the lead and you encouraging the child because you're aware of what the standards are, what the requirements are. So the man who came to the door selling the encyclopedias, that was a prayer answered. And I talked to him. I said, we'll come back at this particular time because my husband will be home. And I didn't want, him to be coming in the house and somebody thinking something that's not what it is because Eddie's gone and here this man is in my house. So I didn't do it that way. I told him, come back. Yeah, that sounds good. Come back when my husband is home and we'll talk about it. So he came back when my husband was home and we talked about it. And he offered not just the entire encyclopedia, he offered homeschooling material, which was pre-packaged for homeschooling, where it had the alphabets in there, magnetic alphabets, where you can put it on this little magnetic screen, and it had the vowel sounds connected, and it had all these different things, cue cards. It was United Educators. I don't know if they still are around now, but they had offered a package that already included everything you would need to start homeschooling. And he had the World Encyclopedia. He had some science encyclopedias. He had medical encyclopedias. He threw that in because I went ahead and paid for everything. I told him, look, we military, we can't really afford it, but I'm going to go ahead and try to see what we can do. And he threw that in. He said, well, I understand we're going to give you a military discount, and, we're going to do everything we can to support you in your efforts and your endeavors, because books are going away, because computers are being more prevalent into the curriculum in the brick and mortar schools and in any other method of communication, of reading and learning. So he was like, well, we'll go ahead and do this. I see you really trying. So he threw that in because he said they get to throw something in if they really want to throw something in. So he did. And there was some books in there that had all the myths, how you hear these stories of the Goldfinger, Mother Goose, Miss Mary Mack, all of these different things. It was all included. United Educators, they sold all of that. And once we got our taxes, I went and paid it all off. I don't believe in keeping bills. So I paid it all off. And Eddie was like, you should have told me before you did that. I'm like, well, I don't believe in keeping bills. So that's the way we're going to do things. So we still have those books. And those books came in handy for homeschooling my children. And we continue. It was not just handy for me homeschooling my kids. It was helpful for me when I continued my own education and I went back to school for my associate's degree, and then my bachelor's degree, and then my master's degree, and even for my PhD. It was helpful for all of that, because the PhDs who were over the classes of the courses that I took, they kept asking me, well, how did you know this information? You know why they kept asking me that? Because they knew that the books that the curriculum provided did not provide the information that I was exhibiting. And the information I was exhibiting was expected in order to pass the course. Now, you could read in between the lines if you want to, but I said it real plainly right there. Just like my Uncle Fred said, we're not given the same books as other people who are not of colored skin. And because of this is why a lot of people can look at you and say, you don't know nothing, even though you may know something, because the situation is not set up for you to have the facts of the information. It's set up so that you have some information, but you can't be confident in what information is factual. And in my book, that's why I wrote my book the way I did, so that people would understand what's factual information from what's information. And that is pertinent to people understanding what you do know and what you don't know. It's not to say that even though we figure out what's factual, it's not to say that we have all the facts that are consecutively in alignment with the proper education that we should have if they would have provided all of what was required to have obtained that level of understanding. It's not to say that. It's to say that we are not held to the level of measurement of understanding that they're trying to keep us underfoot with. So with homeschooling, you're not bound by any particular curriculum. You can have all the curriculums, all the standards, and you can educate your child according to what that child is progressing towards. And you can motivate that child. For example, my son was reading and writing by the age of 2, because every day, not all day, just a few minutes in the day, we would go over some cue cards. I would read to him. He would write, and he would try to do things on his own, even if he was taking the pen and tracing over the words that were on the cue card, so that he would be able to write the letters, and he would be able to spell the words, and he'd be able to read it and not just identify it by looking at it in one location, but every time he see the word in different places, he can read that word. He can write that word. He can spell that word. So only a few minutes out of the day. So I would make breakfast, and we would do something after breakfast, and then only for a short period of time. And then I would let him sit in front of the television and watch videos like Sesame Street, Leapfrog. And the repetition of that was helping him and I. So I don't do repetition. I'm just going to put it out there. I don't like to repeat myself. I really don't. It annoys me to no end. Like, well, you're not listening. So I come to understand that sometimes it's not that people weren't listening. So I'll repeat it, but I won't repeat the same way. I'll repeat it in a different way, because sometimes people don't catch it because you're saying it the way you're saying it. So you say it a different way, they get it. They understand it better. So um, I started doing it that way. And I would sit them in front of the television and it would say the alphabet for them. It would tell them the vowel sounds and all of those things that I was already telling him, but it would reinforce it. And during that time, I would make lunch. So by the time I'm done making lunch, he was already busy, watching the video, and it was reinforcing the education that I was providing for him. So he eat his lunch and have his little drink in front of the video and continue to watch it while I go and get ready so we can go out and do like play dates so he can be around other children. So it was maybe 2 hours max that we would really do anything physically concerning him being in school. And we would go out to the park and he would ride his bike around the park, and it was a little creek and everything over there. So, and then at the end of him getting his little exercise in and me getting that exercise in too, because I'm gonna walk with him around the perimeter of the park while he rides his bike. So then we would get off and start playing at the playground of the park so he can interact with other kids and play with other kids. And then we would go home, and then I would again sit him in front of the television so it can reinforce all that repetition, reinforce. And while we were out, we would see different things and say, look, as it was a correlation to what his studies were. And he would also exhibit interest in other things. Sometimes you'll see a bird, and that's relative to a particular science or a particular subject in school. And you just make the correlation that way so that the child will be more engaged in learning. I don't know if I'm saying it plain enough. So let me put it this way. If he wanted a dog, we would use the dog as it relates to a lot of different subjects across the school curriculum. So the academic curriculum has these little things, and you can make the correlation to, okay, this is how the kid eats. So now just the same way that the dog eats. Oh, that's why you feed me like this. And you read the label, and that goes back to reinforcing reading. Reading is fundamental. And now you read the label and you see all the vitamins and everything that's in the dog's food. And you say, oh, this is how you do nutrition. That's nutrition. That's gym. That's science. It's a lot of different things that you can correlate it to so that it helps the child to understand this is school. We still schooling, even though you're not physically in the brick and mortar school, even though you're not sitting right in front of a book. This is what the book said when it said this. Yeah, this is how it relates to life. A lot of times people don't understand information because they can't make the correlation to life. It's like, this doesn't apply to my life. This has arithmetic, math, science, reading. This doesn't apply to my life. I just look at television. The computer can read to me. The computer can tell me all of these things. And you can take it and correlate it with real life. And that is why homeschooling is far more successful than any brick and mortar school across the board. I don't care what level of education that they're providing. It's the highest level of brick and mortar schooling that you can get, but it pales in comparison to the education that you get from homeschooling. People, folks don't even buy it. I won't say people don't buy encyclopedias anymore. I would say it's very rare that people purchase encyclopedias. A lot of people, they like going to the library. I still took my kids to the library, even though they had their own library at home, and it was an extensive library. I still took them to the library. There was some experience. What'd you say, Eddie? It's funny because Chicago has only company that prints current collections. Yeah, I guess them bad boys online now. I know, right? Everything's online now. You can't buy them because you see how they're taking the books in these current times and they're burning them. It's a reason why they wrote some things in those books that were not accurate, and it was contrived to condition a certain mentality, a certain behavior, which we are now seeing is chaos, total chaos. You wonder how I got there. It wasn't just because those children were bad. It wasn't just because those children didn't want to learn. It was something that was going on in their education and what was happening in their school, in their brick and mortar schools. But I'm just saying, there are times I get tired of looking at computers. I want to get a book to read. Yeah, guess what? You're going to pay a whole lot more money for the book now, because nowadays they know that the books that have the proper education, they cost more money. Go to price and now they're over $1,000. Yeah, they cost more money, even though that's not the way it really is. It really was. It doesn't cost that much to print it. For example, with my book, it doesn't cost that much to print this book, but it's priced up there because the information that's in it. So you have to understand there's nothing I can do about that, but I can encourage you that you invest that little bit to get all the information that's in there, so you can make those correlations, so you can improve your critical thinking skills. You can feel more confident in what you know and how you're acquiring that information, how you're building information and knowledge. How do you do that? I talk about that in my book, and I also show you some things about downsizing in the workplace and how that correlates to exactly information, facts. But these are the reasons why I homeschooled, because I knew how it correlated with the workplace. I understood how it correlates with your life. And I wanted my children to have something that they could use, because I understood that coming into this world as an African American and in the world that we're in, there's many books out here that shows you that is a workplace book. I forget the name of it. I'm probably going to have to do this episode and give a little bit more detail, but I want to try to stay focused on the homeschool perspective. But in this workplace book, it shows how the world was created. Well, the American system workplace was created by just white men, and they were the standard. And trying to integrate people of color was a lot of pushback and a lot of things where it was like, well, we really don't want that. But you have to have that, because there was a global mentality to work internationally, not just nationally and locally. But the education was an issue, a strong issue. But a lot of people, we've been seeing a lot of times now, where a lot of people have elected to homeschool. It wasn't just the pandemic and quarantine that pushed people to homeschool. It was the brick and mortar schools, total chaos, that pushed a whole lot of people to alternative schooling outside of brick and mortar schooling. We saw the development of online schooling for elementary students. It was already available for a higher learning, but it was not available for K through 12 or pre-K through 12, which was an issue. And it was also an issue because people have been diagnosed with being below average learners, whether it was cerebral palsy, whether it was a learning disability such as dyslexia or mathematics. There's actually a thing where you can't do numbers because just like dyslexia, when you turn the letters around and numbers, it's more so with numbers than just letters and numbers. So it was difficult for people to put their mind around, how do we move forward when we're aware of all the challenges in teaching people and reaching them. But in my book, I show you and I explain in detail, very briefly. I can't go into it a lot here because I'm really trying hard to stay on topic. But with homeschooling, we found that when the child is fully engaged, because the parents are excited, the parents are fully engaged, and there's a positive correlation to this academic information being relative to my life, the things I like, the things I play with, the people I see, all the things I want to do. And oh, I have asthma, so this is how that works. So this is why I breathe like this. This is why I do this. So when you have all of these things that's working together to show you how it relates to the other thing, how one thing is related to the other, how math is related to um, what it is that you take medicine, you have asthma, you take medicine. How many puffs of this inhaler should you get? How can you know that if you don't know arithmetic, if you don't know math, if you can't do numbers? So that's how the child began to really become fully engaged in medical, in various sciences, reading, writing, spelling. They had to feel it. They had to know, how is this important to me? Why is this important to me? And that's why homeschooling is so successful. And a lot of times, yeah, we'll use some puppets. We'll use puppeteering and show them different myths. We'll do a play and show a different myth. We'll do a play and show why it's not okay to be a bully. We'll do different things and show, how is this important to me? Why is this important to me? Why do I give a crap when there's so much going on wrong out here and there's so much chaos? Why do I care about academics? I don't. And that's why you have to show them. You have to be patient with them. Why do I care about reading this book when I can go and look at some YouTuber, some podcasters that's sitting there screaming or making sounds, and I like all those sounds that they're making, even though I don't really know what all that ESAR and all that stuff. I don't know what that is. I'm just here doing what everybody else is doing because I'm trying to see if I like it. It's a lot of distractions out here, and they're not going to go anywhere. You have to know your student. You have to be patient with your student. You have to understand, you're not really taking the lead on it. You're supporting your student and what your student wants, but you're doing it in the manner in which you understand the curriculum that they have to meet. So later on, my son decided, in talking to his cousins, that he wanted to go to brick and mortar school because there was something he was missing out on. And he went to brick and mortar school and he hated it. He hated it because you really can't talk in school. You really can't play with your friends. And they had no idea what he knew. They didn't have the same level of education that he had, even though it was kindergarten. So he was already reading and writing and counting and everything. And they were just learning their alphabet and phonetic sounds and things. So he felt very uncomfortable. He didn't want to be there, but he wanted to have the experience. So I didn't pull him out. And he cried a lot. And he felt pressure more than the other students because he understood the implications of things. There was a little girl, she liked him, and she was like, oh, they wanted, her mother and her father were even in on it. It was like, oh, you'll marry this guy. And Teddy was like, he was stressing. And I didn't know what was going on. And he finally talked to me because I would read to them every night. We would do cue cards of Bible study, and I would read them the Bible studies, and we do morals and things like that. So they would still, during the day, they would get their education and they'll get their play in. And at night we would do a little reading, and then they would go to sleep. And so he understood things a little bit better than what people thought he did. And when he said, I can't marry her, I said, what? He said, yeah, they telling me that we're going to get married and all this and that. I was like, Teddy, you're 5. You're not marrying anybody. What is wrong? He said, well, I don't even have a job yet. I can't get her a diamond ring. And he's really more like aware than what the little girl was, who was also only 5 years old. But he understood because he had a different education. He had a different training. He had a different upbringing. So he understood how these things were relative to his life and how it was important to his life. So I didn't have to take the lead on his education and him learning new things and being engaged in learning new things of a different level in the curriculum as far as the schooling standard was. So each year you had to learn X number of things, and for a certain age you had to know certain information, and it could be really difficult because they keep changing it and saying, well, you don't have to know this until you're 7, or you don't have to do this until you're this age or this grade, or and it was difficult. So I just let the child take the lead, and when he took the lead, he was working in different grades all at the same time at different levels. I didn't hold them back. In a brick and mortar school, they hold you back. They say, well, no, we're not doing that right now. Let's do this. So he really did not like brick and mortar school. And I eventually took them out. But I thought about it. I said, well, if in the event that he should ever decide yet again that he wants to return to brick and mortar school, it will be difficult for him because there's such a government pushback for people who are homeschooled to not excel in life, not be accepted in life, and have difficulties getting employment. So I decided to hybrid school them, homeschool them, and allow them to do online schooling with K-12 online. So with that, they still stayed above in their homeschooling. They continued to learn on their own level, but they had to still make sure that they exhibited to the brick and mortar platform online, that they knew the information that they needed to know in order to pass the brick and mortar standards of education. But I did not like the limitations. I didn't like um, how some information in the books that they were providing was totally inaccurate. And it was conditioning a mentality and a behavior I was not in full agreement with, and I could not go along with. So I continued to homeschool them despite where they were being educated otherwise. What you say? It comes down to the family environment. Our children are raised in a learning household. We cover and discuss things at home that I know most kids don't get anywhere else. And a lot of times when parents begin to homeschool their children, they start to learn that their kids know more than what they taught them. Their kids know more than what they thought their kids did. And I always have this situation with my kids where I don't care what they do. Let's talk about it. It was to the point where my kids would even come to me and ask me if they could curse and all this. And I said, well, yeah, you could. I'm not the one I don't have the heaven and hell to put you in. I could punish you for what you're saying, but I don't know why you said what you said. So you have to make the decision, because if I wasn't around when you're wherever you are doing whatever you're doing, that decision is on you, and there's consequences that come with those decisions. So you have to decide for yourself if this is going to be something that you really want, and you have to consider the consequences. And when you give a child that kind of freedom, when you let them understand that, they'll make the right decision. Love, we can rest of this program and this topic. Thank you. Hey, Daddy Lee, how you doing? I appreciate the facts. That's they did it. Yes, he helps them, and it's a collaborative effort. It's not just about one parent. It's not just about one granddaddy, one grandma. I encourage my children to have a positive relationship with everybody in their family. I don't care what their problems are. They can know what the problems are and still have a positive relationship and love that person, even if they have to be distanced from that person. I said that in a previous episode on the Father's Day situation where Eddie was No, he wasn't on that. The episode before that. But anyway, when I did the show about Father's Day, we have to understand that we must foster a positive correlation between why children should do the things that they should do and why they should not do the things that they shouldn't do. What are the consequences? What are the things that you know could go wrong, and are they avoidable in any kind of way? So when I saw things were going wrong because of 9/11, I was like, well, how can we, prevent this? So that kind of mentality continued on with homeschooling your children, and you can't get tired from it. There's more than one way to help the children excel academically. You just got to keep at it and help them, support them, encourage them, motivate them. It's not about you. It's about them getting the education. You don't have to read the same books they're reading in order for them to read it and get the understanding that they need to have. You just have to encourage them to read the book. You just have to encourage them to do the math. You just have to encourage them, period. For example, you don't have to know math. I've exceeded my time, but I'm going to give you this. I'm going to leave you with this. Calculatorsoup.com. Calculatorsoup.com is a place where people can go and do all kinds of math for free, and it breaks it down for you. I use that, and the kid used that, and it's like, I don't have to be perfect at math. I don't have to be a mathematician. I can sit there and show them where do they go in order to know. You are not a computer specialist, and your kids are really shining with computers and Minecraft and all of that sort of thing. Meanwhile, you're not involved in it. You don't do it. You don't know how to play it. They're on a PlayStation and they're playing Call of Duty. They're playing all kinds of different video games. You don't know how to play them. You can't do that, but they do. And all you did was encourage them to do it. You provided the materials and tools and the video games and the money and the internet and the what is it, the ticket for them to go online, some sort of package where you say, oh, okay, well, you have the gold package so you could play as many games as you want. You're the one supplying all of that, even though you don't know the intricacies and you're not completely involved and being exhausted with being interactive with it, but they're excelling. Same thing with academics. Just get them the books. Get them the books, get them the computer, the calculator, get them the materials they need and encourage them to use it and be excited when they learn something and ask them questions like, wow, what did you learn today? You seem really more knowledgeable than I thought you were. What did you learn today? What? I didn't know you knew that. Have conversations with them and you'll come to understand that child has a higher level of understanding than what you originally thought. And it will be because you motivated them in the proper way. It has nothing to do with your level of education, your level of understanding. I'm just saying, don't get tired. I came to homeschooling and my kids, they knew more than what I did at their ages. And I'm happy that they do, because I promise you, I didn't like to read. I didn't want to read. I didn't want to write. I didn't want to learn anything. I was focused on all the chaos, bullying, people not getting along, people being mean for no reason, and the culture barriers and all of the stereotypes and just everything. It was so much chaos. I could not focus on academics. Learn what? Why? Why is that important to me? Why is that relevant? I don't care. Do you see what's happening right here? They're being bullied every day, and they just bullying them because he's Russian and doesn't speak English. I don't understand that. I'll be his friend. So it was things like that was going on that I didn't give any concern to academics the way I should have. And a lot of times we can't convey those things that's happening in our lives to our parents or the teachers or whomever it is that's trying to help us to learn. That's one of the reasons why it is vital for you to just have conversations with your kids as if they're knowledgeable people. Just listen to what they're saying. Hear them out. Let them talk. Encourage them and motivate them and buy them things that help them to learn more. That's all homeschooling is. Well, that's been my time for today. Let me see these comments. What did you say? Wait, no. I would suggest that you find how they learn and grow there. Yeah, because there's different learning styles for every kid. Every kid is different. Don't try to force them. Eddie put a website in the comments that you can go to. Every child is different. Try not to force them to meet the standard. Remember, I told you there's a low standard and a high standard. And you don't have to necessarily stick in the grade that they're in. My kids were learning on multiple academic levels. What's total? So just go ahead and know your child, listen to them, encourage them, and you'll see that they'll meet the curriculum standards just by that alone. Okay, that's been my time today. I'll have to do another episode of this, and hopefully you'll have some questions for me. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so you'll know when I'm coming on, and you'll be able to jump right into the comments. And if I see you in the comments, I'm going to read the comment. I'm going to read the comments. I'm going to answer the comments. So if you have questions, go ahead and ask them. I'll try to get back to them after a while in the next episode. But that's been my time today. Remember, mental health is physical wealth. Mental health